Hey everyone, thanks for checking out Indoor Recess. I'm Braydon Holmyard, part of the Toronto Stars audience team, and I'm back with the great Doug Smith today to talk about your Toronto Raptors. Doug, how are things going today?
That's a end of a tiring long week, but they're going all right. Beautiful day out here in Mississauga, so everything's good.
Good. So we're back on the porch, and Doug, you and I had pre-recorded a Raptors Celtics series a few days ago. It was a series preview, but a lot has happened over the last 2 days in a historic time for the NBA as players took a stand against anti-Black racism and police brutality in the wake of the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin. Doug, you've been around the NBA for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like what we just watched over the last couple of days?
No, not at all. The only thing that could come remotely close would be Donald Sterling with the Clippers in 2014, but this has been historic, unprecedented, so important, and so big. And it's hard to describe because it's so unusual and so important and so global. It's historic in all of sports, not just basketball.
So the Milwaukee Bucks obviously made a remarkable statement to kind of kickstart things here by not walking onto the court for their game against the Magic. If we go back a little earlier, it was the voices of Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell and their teammates who floated the idea of boycotting their game. The Raptors were a big part of this movement, and that's no surprise, is it?
No, not at all. They're very conscious of social injustices. They've just come through the Mazzei Ujiri with the cop in Oakland situation. They are more cognizant of it than most NBA teams because it's been very personal to them since June of 2019. So I'm not surprised they talked about it, and I'm not surprised at all in the leadership role a bunch of players took.
So over the last few days, is there anything in particular that has really stayed on your mind and stayed with you?
No, I think the thing is that you always wondered through Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, back to Trayvon Martin. You always wondered if when would be the one instance that would be the tipping point, and maybe Jacob Blake is. And unfortunately, it's taken all these horrible incidences for it to be hugely in the conscious of everyone. And I think that's the thing I'm going to take away, that this might be the one tipping point in a long, not finished, but long and important fight.
So finally, on another note here, which is again away from the game, but it's also important. I wanted to give you a chance to maybe comment on this. Can you tell us a little bit more about Terri Embry, who sadly passed away this week?
Yeah, it was terrible news to get yesterday morning. Wayne Embry's wife, Terri, they've been married 62 years. She's been a conscientious fighter for civil rights, voting rights, human rights for a long time. Marched on Selma with Dr. Martin Luther King in 1965. Her and Yvonne Robertson, Oscar Robertson's wife. Wayne tells that story. I wrote it today. I wrote it in 2019 and put it in the blog again today. She was just one of the sort of unsung heroes of the NBA and of civil rights. She fought for it for her entire life, and it's her passing is a terrible tragedy for the Embry family. It's a terrible tragedy for the NBA family, for the Embry family, for all her friends, many friends in the game and around. She was a very important woman, and I think that the best tribute people could pay to her, and I said this today, was to continue her fight, continue to rail against the injustices that are out there, do whatever you can to make them better. And I think that's the tribute that we pay to the memory of Terri Embry and to the existence of Wayne Embry.
All right. Thank you, Doug. You can read more about Terri Embry at Doug's blog today at thestar.com. Now we'll switch over to version 1 of this video. So thanks, Doug.
No problem. Talk to you later on.
Let's go back a little bit to the Raptors' first round, maybe a little bit of a recap. If we pretend for a second that the Kyle Lowry injury didn't happen, could that series versus the Nets have gone any better for the Raptors?
No, it was easy. No one really got stressed or pushed. The ankle injury to Kyle Lowry put a pall over it at the end for sure, but they were never really challenged. Game 2 was close, but in the last 7 minutes, they won relatively handily, and they sort of grinded out a good win there. But the other 3 were 25, 28, 28-point wins. They were laughers. And due respect to the Nets, the roster they put on will be hard pressed to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that one of the best teams in basketball beat them up easily was not a very big surprise at all. But yeah, for the Raptors, no one really had to get stressed or pushed all that far, all that hard. It was over quickly and got them 3 days off before the next series. So yeah, it was pretty much a dream matchup, except the Kyle Lowry ankle thing.
We'll get to that in a second. But there were some questions about Siakam in the seeding games. Did you like what you saw from him in the first round?
Yeah, he looked good. He didn't look, he never looked great. He didn't hit him for 40 points or anything like that. But he looked, decisive when he got the ball. He made plays. He had 10 assists in Game 3, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, he was fine. I know there was a lot of angst early about is he this great? Can he go to the next level? He got to the level that he needed to get to, and I think, as we've said all along, when they've asked him to do things, he's done them. And what they ask him to do in the Celtics series, I'm sure he's going to be able to do.
Is there anything the Raptors need to tighten up as they're going to be taking on a much tougher opponent now?
Yeah, I think they turn the ball over a little bit too much, and I don't think their half-court offense is quite as efficient as they want it to be. You didn't see a lot of Marc Gasol passes off cuts to guys like Norm Powell and OG Anunoby. You didn't see that an awful lot. The ball didn't swing a lot side to side in any of the games. They were lethal in transition, but I do think their half-court offense is a bit of an issue. And the Celtics are a very good defensive team. It's going to be a big challenge to get that late shot clock stuff working for the Raptors.
It's been a big week of Raptors news, and obviously another major story that happened is Nick Nurse is a Coach of the Year, which is obviously a huge accomplishment. But it's also worth noting that the Raptors have had the Coach of the Year in 2 of the last 3 seasons. So what does that say about the organization as a whole?
Well, they get really good players, which is a pretty good thing. But I think Casey winning it was because it was a culmination of years of pounding the same idea and finally getting a lot of success with it. Nick won it because he's just so creative, and he took a team that lost 2 very good players and won more games. It obviously speaks to the talent on the roster, but I do think it speaks to the creativity of the coaches and their ability to figure out what they need from each player and to get it out of them. And I think in this day's NBA, that's a tough task sometimes, because guys don't want to be told a lot what they can't do, and they want to be involved in the process. And both Dwayne and Nick did that very, very well. Nick extraordinarily well as a listener as much as a teller as a head coach.
All right, so for those who might have missed it, what's the latest on the Kyle Lowry injury front? And I know they're being a bit quiet about it.
Yeah, he didn't practice Monday. I don't think he was ever going to. They're on the court right now. I don't presume he's getting much work in. I don't think he needs game speed. I don't think he needs reps in practice. I think he needs treatment and rest. And we don't know. And we're not going to know until the 6th. It's a 6:30 game Thursday. We're probably not going to know until 6:15 Thursday night. And that's fine. And that's the way the Raptors operate. It's the way a lot of NBA teams operate. They want to give everybody every minute possible to rehab it. I was told by people who were around the team yesterday that he's walking much better. There's not a lot of limp. He's putting weight on his foot. But whether he can run and cut and jump, that's going to be a test he's going to have to go through tomorrow afternoon, I think. We're not going to know right till game time. And I think we knew that from Sunday night on.
So we're not going to get too much into the hypotheticals because we don't know much. But if he does miss even a game, do the Raptors change their game plan, or is it just the next man up mentality they always have?
I think it's going to be the next man up thing. They only play 7 guys now. They're only going to play 6 if Kyle doesn't play a lot. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson will play. Terrence Davis will play. But the Raptors all year have not really worried about the other team or what they got. They just do what they have to do each night. And in one game or 2 games or 3 games, they sort of figure it out. Over the long term, you can't lose a 6-time All-Star like Kyle Lowry and expect to have great success. But this team has shown that it can figure things out for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 games if they have to. Oh, it's a blow, but it will cut down on the number of guys who play. But the 6 main guys who are going to go out there if Kyle doesn't play are certainly capable of winning any basketball game against any team.
All right, so let's look at the Celtics. In your mind, what's a more intriguing matchup? 2 of the league's best young stars in Siakam versus Tatum, or 2 of the league's best coaches, Nurse versus Stevens?
I think the players. I think the matchups of Siakam and OG Anunoby and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is going to be fascinating to watch because that's where I think that's where the series is going to win. The guard play is going to be crazy too. Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart, Van Vliet, Norm Powell, Kyle Lowry. But those wings, those forwards, those four guys, Brown, Tatum, Siakam, and Anunoby, they're going to determine who wins the series. I'm interested in how the Raptors guard them, and I'm interested in how the Celtics, if OG Anunoby makes them pay for not guarding him. And I think that's going to be a big thing to watch.
Yeah, there's so many great two-way players in the series. That's what I'm most excited about too. When you look over up and down the lineups, how do these teams match up? Obviously, the Raptors had the better regular season, but like, is it an even ground going into these playoffs?
They're mirror images of each other. I really think so. They're both playing really well. They both got exactly the same kind of guys, tough-minded, good players, young players. I think the Raptors' experience will probably win out in the end, but that Celtics team is really, really good. And I think Jason Tatum's got a chance to be in the MVP conversation in 3 or 4 years. He's that good. But I do think in the end, the Raptor experience will win out, Lowry being the wild card.
So one more question for you before we look around the NBA a little bit. Does Marc Gasol need to bring more offense in this series, or does he do more than enough of everything else?
I think they'd like him to score a little bit more. I think they'd like him to get on the block a little bit more and go at guys like Daniel Tice and Enes Kanter if he's got a chance. I think where his offense has to come around is I think the other guys have to cut around him a lot better, and he's got to be more of a facilitator, especially if Lowry doesn't play. You need him at the elbow making passes and initiating offense. And that's not so much on him as it is on guys like Powell, Davis, and Anunoby to move around him. And I think that's where he's got to be. They have to be better with him in that kind of role.
All right, so a lot happened this week. So let's take a quick look around the NBA. Doncic, first of all, I'm ashamed to say I missed it live, but I probably watched the highlight of his buzzer beater 60 times. Were you able to catch it?
Yeah, I watched a lot of the game before the Raptors played on Sunday night. It was astonishing. He was great. He is great, and I think in big games, big players come up big, and he was outstanding that night, playing on a wonky kind of ankle against very, very good defenders. The Clippers are got a lot of good guys who can guard you and lock you down, and he had an astonishing triple double and made the shot. It was a coming out party because it was in the playoffs and everybody was watching. But this is not Doncic is this good, and has been. This guy was the MVP of the Euro Final Four. This is not a chump. This is not a kid who just learned how to play. Yeah. This guy's been playing against some of the best men in the world for years in Europe.
So Brett Brown is out in Philadelphia. What else do the Sixers need to do to kind of clean up this mess?
They got to get some magical financial help because they're in a mess money-wise. I think they have the second highest payroll of like $140 million going into next year on 9 guys. The cap and tax thresholds are likely to drop because of lost revenue this year. They're in a mess, and I don't know what they can do. I don't know who. You think it would be a good coaching job, but I think it's a bad coaching job because their roster is so flawed. You can't make. I don't think you can make that team win. They don't have enough shooting. You don't have enough speed, and you got a point guard who may be a great defensive player, but he will not shoot the basketball. And in this game, this man's NBA, you can't have a point guard who doesn't shoot. It just doesn't work. No matter how good Ben Simmons is, if he's not a threat to shoot the ball, he's not as good as he could be. I think they should listen to offers for Embiid and Simmons. But again, if you're going to deal one of those guys, you're going to have to take back some long-term bad money, and they got more than enough long-term bad money as it is. I don't know that's they've screwed that one up big time. And they let Jimmy Butler, JJ Redick go, and gave all kinds of money to Tobias Harris. That's a management issue. That's not Brett Brown. That's the guy above him. And I don't know how Elton Brand's going to fix that because it's a mess of his own doing.
I'm fascinated to see how it all plays out there. So one more, Paul George had a better game last night, and he talked about his mental health in the bubble and how he was actually checked out and he's been struggling. I think it's impressive that he admitted that. And when you look at all the memes that have been going on the last week, it makes me feel like there's a case where sometimes basketball fans forget that these guys are people.
They absolutely do, and they have for years, and it's a huge problem with fans because these are guys. The Raptors, for instance, if they go to the NBA Finals, will be on a 104-day road trip. 104 days away from your family and friends in a hotel room in Florida. The Clippers, the same thing. every team that's there the players are sacrificing their lives to play basketball. And I'm surprised more players haven't come out and said, this is killing me, because I thought it would be I said right from the start, the team that was mentally tough and able to handle the isolation of that bubble was going to win. And I commend Paul George for saying, I checked out. It's hard. It's got to be hard to be away from all the comforts of your life in a bubble environment like they are. And I'm glad he played well, because it was getting out of hand. It really was. The people were, they don't think, like you said, Braydon, they don't think of these guys as human beings. They think of them as entertainers and athletes, and they're not. They're men, first of all, who have other tugs in their lives.
Right. I'm sure other players are happy that he spoke up about that. So hopefully that'll kind of calm down that conversation now from fans. I said one more, but I do want to give a shout out to some Canadians, because the performances in these playoffs from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LeGwent Dort, both of them in Oklahoma City. And then you obviously have Chris Boucher here, Kelly Olynyk in Miami, who contributed to that sweep. And of course, did you see the 360 from Jamal Murray last night?
Yeah, I love Jamal Murray. I thought he's like, I can't remember who said it, but a couple of guys have. He's the most un-Canadian Canadian ever. He just plays hard.
Yeah.
And he doesn't give a crap. And he does things that are astonishing on the court. He's a great player. That was a great move. I don't know whether Denver could win that series, but I think the Jamal Murray game 5 is going to be one that people go, oh my goodness, yeah, he's really good.
But yeah, that Mitchell Murray matchup has been my favorite to watch in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, they've been pretty entertaining.
All right, so that's it for another episode of Indoor Recess. Follow Doug on Twitter @SmithRaps and visit thestar.com/Raptors to read his work. Doug, thank you again for the chat.
All right, Braydon, we'll talk to you down the road.